Welcome to Drop Talks, the podcast where we drop knowledge and insights from the world of influencer marketing. I'm your host, Kelsey, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this journey. In today's episode, we have a special guest with us today, our very own account executive team lead, Josh Severson. Josh is in his second year at ApexDrop, serving in 4 different roles so far, and currently the sales team lead. He'll be sharing some of his best tips on brand strategy for long-lasting success. Josh, how are you?
I'm great. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you guys. Thanks so much for the intro.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So, Josh, I mentioned in your intro that you've served in 4 different roles so far. So can you share a little bit more about your journey and experience since you started working at ApexDrop?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a train ride, that's for sure. I actually started on one side of the sales team and got really familiar with the back-end process. So the way that we work and just exceed expectations with clients that we do have. That was, of course, a tremendous insight into really a way that a world-class, definitely influencer agency is run. Just interacting with brands and being able to collaborate between the brands and the influencers or the people behind the profiles, right? To be able to get, tremendous amounts of success. I think from there, we pretty quickly transitioned into trying to drum up as many new conversations as we could so that we could bring in just a boatload of new clients, because we had a super successful 2022 as influencer marketing started to really shift into adopting the micro and nano influencers. So was really a need there for us to help facilitate and get people into the right seats and making sure that we were putting our organization in the best structure to be really optimized to do so and take advantage of that time. From there, it kind of went over to systematically help change some of the processes from software perspective, much more boring on that side of things. But then this summer, pretty recently, I suppose, took on the role of leading the sales team and have had a ton of fun with that, just being able to not only be the face of ApexDrop for a new brand who might not have heard of the industry or the agency itself, but really just being a liaison for the needs that client or prospective client might need, and being able to work with them and uncover some solutions that we can share. Clearly, it's been a long ride, but 2 years flew by in a blink of an eye. Yeah.
Imagine. What would you say, and I imagine with your different roles and experiences there, that it's hard to pinpoint one thing specifically, but in your opinion, what would you say kind of one of your greatest achievements during your time here at ApexDrop has been so far?
It's a really good question. I think for me, it's always about the people behind it. So this is almost a silly answer because it has nothing to do with my professional success or trajectory or anything like that. But I have a few friends who are influencers, right? They're not famous. They're nobody you've heard of, but they worked really hard to get their following, their network in a place where it could be valuable to a brand, maybe, right? Seeing them not only adopt the ApexDrop mobile application, but then really start to take on some of our campaigns and work with brands. Then, of course, the feedback that they've shared with me about their experience and working with our campaign team and everybody at ApexDrop, that's as rewarding as anything that I could do, professionally or put out, for sure. So yeah, just being able to facilitate some of that has been super fun.
That's really cool. And I imagine that hits close to home for you as well, just being able to see the success of your friends being able to do that. I think that's great. So,
yeah,
kind of pivoting a little bit, the world of influencer marketing is rapidly evolving. It changes every day, every hour. It moves so quick. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, what are some of the most, common and pressing questions that marketers typically have about influencer marketing when they approach ApexDrop for guidance?
Yeah. So there are loads of questions when folks come to us looking for guidance. So I think it's important to have the context that ApexDrop has been doing this for 8 years. They have an airtight system, airtight process, and that starts from the top, right, with Zach, the CEO, just being really, I'll say, a pioneer in the space, right? So allowing us to have the answers to those questions. But I think, to your point, it goes into probably twofold, right? So first of all, it's definitely the technology, right? How are we staying on the cutting edge? How are you staying relevant, right? It's easy to say that, Instagram is the place to be. Maybe that's true, but certainly there are things like Amazon has a creator workplace now, and Shopify, which is an e-commerce business, is doing their own creator marketplace. And of course, the rise and the adoption of TikTok and things like that. So being able to give confidence that the channel or the technology that you're using to get these ringing endorsements is putting you in the right place. And ApexDrop has enough experience. We've run thousands of campaigns, right? So being able to lean on that and sort of tip our cap and point you in the right direction is something that is a luxury, right? And I think that's tremendously valuable in conversations that we have, even if it's with a brand that's brand new and they're totally unfamiliar with influencer marketing. It's like, where do we start? Well, great. We've got the answers for you. And I think that that's a big part of it, because it really isn't as cookie cutter or templated of an answer anymore, right? Where should we start? Frankly, it's a loaded question. So being able to have the experience to lean on is huge.
Yeah. So what I heard from that was talking about like, where do you even get started? Like people being somewhat overwhelmed and looking to, the experts from ApexDrop for really guidance on where to begin, like what platforms, where to tap into. So, in your time, your 2 years with ApexDrop, again, everything's constantly changing. So what were some of the biggest changes that you've witnessed in the industry's dynamics, whether it be between platforms or shifts, anything that you've really noted in your 2 years with ApexDrop as changes?
Definitely. So starting with that technology piece, that's certainly going to be one of it, one of the key areas. But I think the really fun part has been, to put this in layman's terms, it's a shift from the macro influencers or the gigantic influencers, right? It's the Kim Kardashians, the Kanye West, the Taylor Swift, maybe not in that order. Those type of creators, right? That was where influencers, your mind always went to when you would think of influencers. Well, now it's certainly become so much more of a human industry space, right? Because the adoption of micro and nano influencers are becoming so much more heavily weighted. I have no idea what's going on in Taylor Swift's life, right? It's very hard for me to relate to her. But when you see somebody on a social media platform who you can connect with, or maybe is from your hometown, or any of these different things that give you a small connection with, it really goes a long way. And that's where we're seeing the industry shift from the macro focused endorsements to getting these really genuine, these really human endorsements, ads, promotions from smaller creators, sure, but that's only because their profile might have a certain amount of followers or something like that. It's so much more tangible to the viewer, right? I think that's certainly the biggest shift, but then it does go into the technology, right? So I think that's part of it, right? So I mentioned Amazon just a moment ago, and actually Amazon came out with a creator marketplace to allow influencers to get an avenue to working with brands. And they've really made it creator centric, right? So it's allowing the creator that freedom to be able to leave a little bit of an open-ended story, right? That they can fill in their own, hyperbole and being able to just get tangible, like anecdotal stories going around that really make you more attracted to buying or even just following a brand, right? That's going to be a big shift as well.
I definitely agree that, building strong relationships with influencers, between brands and influencers, and then, obviously influencers and ApexDrop is, a crucial aspect of influencer marketing. So I'm curious, kind of continuing that train of thought for you, can you provide any more insights into like the best strategies or practices for brands looking to establish and, nurture those relationships effectively?
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a great topic. I think one of the biggest things for ApexDrop, for influencers on their different platforms, and then for the brands themselves, it's a really hard space to navigate, just from the idea of we're currently going through all of these shifts that we're talking about, right? So having the constant evolution of technology, the constant evolution of, where is my money best spent? And obviously market trends lead to those decisions being made. It's not just an emotional feeling that somebody has. But then that's where it becomes the answer to your question is with relationships, right? So starting small and being able to curate relationships so that you can really obviously communicate and have like a trust, a credibility with an influencer, sure. Because as these, landscapes change around us, basically the ground moves around our feet. Having those people to lean on and the relationships themselves, that's what carries you through the constant change. And I think that's the thing that ApexDrop does better than anybody else is we allow the creators to put their best foot forward, to go above and beyond, but then also to really put their personality on the line, choose the brands that they want to represent and vice versa, because then you get buy-in from both sides, right? When an influencer feels like emotionally tied to the brand, no matter if TikTok is the next wave or if there's some new virtual reality that we don't even know about yet, these things are going to come down to relationships. Who do you have in your corner, right? And that's the thing that ApexDrop does a fantastic job of, but influencer marketing is really a key to unlocking.
And I think too, consumers who are consuming the content that the influencers create can tell when it's a disingenuous relationship. They can tell when it's not a good fit.
Yeah, that's such an important point too. And I have this Zach, our CEO, right? He's obsessed with authenticity. And there's this adage that I tell folks is you can't fake authentic, right? As soon as you tell someone, hey, go hold this bottle and put a smile on your face, you ruined it. You lost. Trying to be authentic is the opposite of being authentic. So giving creators, but really just anyone, the ability, the position to say like, this is what I really think about this, you can feel it. You're totally right.
Mm-hmm. So we've had Zach on the show before, and he's given examples about, and I'm sure you've heard this before, about his pizza shop analogy, about opening a pizza shop, right? So many companies want to see that quick turnaround about like the short-term gains. And, for those of you who haven't heard our episode, go check it out with Zach, the CEO of ApexDrop. But, so many companies are looking for those short-term gains. So I'm curious, how do you work with brands to ensure that influencer campaigns contribute to their long-term growth and brand success when people sometimes can be, I don't want to say short-sighted, but they want to see those quick gains? How do you make sure they see the long picture?
Yeah, this is a really important topic to address. And it's something that I think oftentimes, especially as marketers, we tiptoe around it because we live in an instant gratification era, right? No question. I want this podcast to get 10,000 plays tonight, right? I do. Is that realistic? I don't know, right? So what we can do and what I can do to answer your question is you have to continue to put your left foot in front of the right foot and then right foot in front of the left foot and just keep climbing and playing the long game, especially in a space, an industry like influencer marketing. It's a hot button term, but virality is very real, right? It happens. So when a new brand comes about or when a new product is launched, right, there's a huge opportunity there for, it to drive unforeseen expectations, right? Views, just as far as going into and wanting to become familiar with that, right? Like the viral piece is real, but you can't predict that, right? And that's a really challenging piece. So what ApexDrop is doing and has done, right? They've been around for 8 years and of course, agreed, Zach can speak to this better than anybody. He is truly a pioneer. He's a figurehead in the space. You have to continue to do the right things. You have to continue to get up in the morning and, brush your teeth, right? Because otherwise they rot day by day, right? It's the same thing with influencer marketing. If you want to grow your brand, you have to do it one day at a time. And sure, absolutely, we want to help you hit a rocket, right? Be able to put a jetpack on and fly up half the mountain. But frankly, it's just not something that you can predict. So you have to go through the tried and true strategies. And I think that is where ApexDrop becomes a key player in brands strategies because we offer both, right? The virality piece is something that, we can help you monetize. But then at the same time, more realistically and certainly more forecastable is we've been doing this for 8 years. We've taken enough of those left foot in front of the right foot steps, and we know what the best way forward is. So it's just being able to lean on experiences and certainly navigate the landscape, navigate the mountain, if you will, as we go. And then, yeah, hopefully you've got a parachute for when we get to the top.
I love it. I love it. Well, one thing that I've heard, Josh, kind of throughout the theme of this episode so far of our conversation is really focusing on relationships and building and fostering, authentic, genuine conversations. So, obviously in your role, you work closely with brands and influencers. So how do you manage and facilitate those relationships to ensure successful and mutually beneficial partnerships? I know we touched on it a little bit, but I want to hear if you've got any like real specific tips and tricks.
Totally. It's about communication. I think in a lot of our relationships in life, it comes down to communication. I think that's the easiest way to build trust with anybody, a client or, somebody who's ultimately a customer, right? These are types of things that you can do. And again, it's the same sort of story. Is you have to build that day by day. It's not like you can just show up on someone's door and expect to stay the night after having just met them, right? It doesn't work like that. So being able to have those long-term relationships starts with building trust, right? So allowing not only yourself to get a little bit of creative freedom, I think from the brand's perspective, that's a really important thing as well, is we're very controlling, especially leaders in business. It's a hard thing to be able to give up some control. But when you do, it allows that other person to have the feeling, the emotion that like, okay, they're invested in me, they trust me, and they're ready for me to take a little bit of that gray area and make it colorful of my own, right? So it's a hard conversation to have. It really is. I think that one of the more fun things that we get to do is show off some of the ways that, that gray area gets filled in, because we are absolutely true to that, right? Our model is entirely trust-based, right? Credibility is one of the things that ApexDrop helps you monetize on, right? So just being able to have those relationships and see them nurtured from, a business to brand perspective, and being the humans behind the brand, I think that's a big part of it too, right? Because, again, it's hard to relate to Nike, right? But maybe I've had a conversation with somebody at Nike, or they've been working with me for a couple of years now, right? And it allows you to get really emotionally attached to the brand, and that's where those long-term relationships just flourish, nourish, whatever you want to call it. Yep.
I think that's fantastic. And, Josh, you've mentioned a few times now that ApexDrop has been, really working with influencers for the past 8 years now, right? And I'm thinking back 8 years ago, just kind of where the world of influencer marketing was then, it's nowhere near where it was now, right? Like, I don't think TikTok was nearly as influential as it was, 8 years ago as it is now. So, with this ever-changing landscape of social media platforms, how has ApexDrop adapted, its influencer marketing strategies to stay relevant and still effective in reaching its target audiences?
Yeah. I've said this before too, and really it's true. We're in a luxurious position because it starts from the top, right? Zach, ApexDrop CEO, he's a pioneer, and that means more so than just, being out in front of the rest of his field. It's truly paving the path in front of him. He's a trailblazer, right? So you're right. In 2015, TikTok didn't exist. Legit, like literally, it was founded in 2016, right? It made its way to the United States in 2019, right? So. Yeah. We're 4 years deep at this point. So it's important to have that leadership, that really forward-thinking leadership, but then really it's guided, right? So because we have that ability to be able to adapt and move around, it then, and this is going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but it comes down to the relationships, right? When we start to hear creators say, hey, this TikTok platform is really fun, and I've had a lot of success showing off brands or connecting with my followers on TikTok. Well, sure enough, ApexDrop is a leader in TikTok influencer agency, right? As far as TikTok influencer agencies, right? So because of that, right, it gives us a huge advantage to be able to constantly adapt, but really it's feedback. And again, it goes back to the relationship question that you asked, is we have built trust, have those ongoing relationships with 20,000 influencers in the US. So as US markets, technology, social medias continue to change and evolve, we're going to be right there with them because, we're working with the people who feel those changes more than most.
And, for those of you who didn't tune in last week to our episode, one of your colleagues and I had a great discussion about TikTok and the ever-changing kind of landscape of TikTok. So that's another great plug for people to take a listen to. So Josh, I know you mentioned before, and we touched a little bit on it about kind of one of your greatest achievements, but I'm curious to kind of backtrack a little bit. And in your 2 years, have you received any either success stories or memorable client feedback regarding the impact of influencer marketing on their brand's growth and visibility?
Yes, absolutely. I could be here for hours giving you some answers to this one. And I think it's too easy to be drawn to the major brands, right? We genuinely work with some Fortune 500 brands and some household names, right, in our portfolio. And those are fun, super attractive, sexy, all of the above, right? But for me, it's more about the smaller brands who are putting their hearts and their souls into the products that they produce, and being able to make an impact with those types of businesses is unparalleled, right? Because, so a tangible example, we work with an audio company, right? And I've been following them for a couple of months. I'm huge into sound. I have a home sound system that I built myself, and it's really important to me. Audio quality is something that continues to grow and evolve, and I'm one that appreciates it. Well, I would see this brand on social media, and all of their ads would be dissecting their headphones or showing you this speaker and all the different layers it has to it, and all these different fancy features that even myself, as someone who's a connoisseur of the space, I have no idea what that means to me, right? But then to see that brand really start to let loose and allow the influencers to speak about their products themselves, because it's not a cheap space, right? Like, this is something that they genuinely had to invest in. And then to hear those influencers give their own real world, like, hey, this headphone fits me so well when I'm doing a workout, right? When I'm on a run, it doesn't even wiggle out. Like, I'm going to be able to wear these every time I go on a run. Or I was on the phone, and man, the audio quality was just so fantastic coming through. There was no buzz, there was no delay. It was incredible. It was almost like I wasn't using Bluetooth. And then it's, the noise cancellation and all these features that actually matter to you and me as we wear headphones as everyday people, versus the creators of this product who are so invested in all of the features and all of the technologies. It's a really fun split to be able to see the success come from just having a human conversation about the product itself. And seriously, I have dozens of those types of examples, but that's one that stands out for sure.
So it sounds like building that trust and loyalty was huge for that brand that you gave. And I imagine too, we've had previous conversations about building that trust and loyalty within, your influencers to make sure that the message of the company is really getting across. So how do you incorporate, building that brand loyalty into your influencer marketing campaigns?
Brand loyalty is something that you can never have enough of. I think we see that every day, especially just with how virtual the world is and how global the markets are, right? Like, I asked Anheuser-Busch, right? It's been a tough year for them. It's one of the most prominent brands in the world. Their brand trust took a huge hit this year. You can get into the reasons why, but if they hadn't been an established, credible brand with really a product that's been adopted by so many and is trusted and so many are loyal to, they'd be in a lot of trouble, a lot more trouble than they're in now, fiscally speaking. So yeah, the idea that those types of companies can have a small hitch and take a huge fall is, both a warning and an opportunity for smaller brands, because as we're discussing, like, taking all the right steps on a daily basis is massively important, right? And it's something that your brand really can't do without. So being able to build that brand loyalty from, and using just the past comment, the audio company example, right? Being able to build trust as the go-to headphone, right? Where there are loads of options. It's something that you're never going to lose, right? I'm going to remember this brand, and I'm going to remember why I purchased them in the first place and my experience using that brand. So because of that, it allows for influencer marketing to have a big role in not only the growth of massive and established companies, but also in small and really getting on their feet, starting to run types of brands. It puts us at a really luxurious position to be able to really weaponize the people behind those endorsements and the people behind those effectively decisions that you're going to make to buy your next pair of headphones, right? So all of that going into the brand trust is something that, we take really seriously. And it's probably one of the things that we pride ourselves on the most. So I appreciate the question.
And do you think communication is key to building that brand loyalty? I know you're going to laugh because I know that's been an underlying theme of this episode, but do you think that's one of the keys to it?
Absolutely. Communication it's the most important piece, right? Being able to have human connections separates you from the brand, the green dollar sign or the red dollar sign, right? Like it really does allow you to connect with people in a way that we know works, right? It goes back to ancient Greece that I won't get into, but right. When we went through COVID, it was really hard to keep a positive outlook on your communities because you have to work so hard to have those communications that really matter, right? And I think now that we've all experienced that and we've all lived through it, it's something that we don't take for granted. And that's a huge benefit to, not only just our mental health, but also the growth of advertising, right? Being able to say, hey, we're no longer in this era where we, put the model on the billboard. It's like, no, I want to hear a real person who I actually feel like I can relate to, or that person might be my friend. I want to know what they have to say about it. And you don't get there without having those conversations that maybe are hard to have. Maybe you had some feedback. Like, again, it's like, hey, I love your product, but I don't know what this means, right? Can you help me explain this in a way that makes sense for, a 16-year-old, right? In the case of headphones, certainly it's, in the case of somebody who goes to a really loud, noisy gym or is out on a run in New York City and the streets are so loud, right? Like these are the types of conversations that we need to be having. So being able to get there from the brand through the creator into the audiences, the millions of masses that are ultimately consumers, it's the key aspect in every relationship, certainly in advertising today. Absolutely. Communication is, one of the primary ingredients. Yep.
Important. Good to know. Fantastic. So, Josh, pivoting a little bit, diversity and inclusion is pivotal in a lot of companies' roots, right? And I'm curious to hear from your perspective with ApexDrop, how is ApexDrop able to contribute to improving brand diversity and inclusion in influencer marketing campaigns? And also, too, we talked a little bit about Anheuser-Busch, but I'm curious, why is it important for brands to prioritize diversity in their influencer partnerships?
Totally. And again, this goes back to sort of changing mentalities from the model on the billboard, right? It was just the norm for so long that was the way that you would advertise your products. And today that seems totally ridiculous, right? Which is a great thing. But the idea behind diversity is something that has probably been thrown to the wayside or maybe just overlooked for far too long. And one of the amazing things that ApexDrop allows is really a creator insights type of perspective. So we work with tens of thousands of influencers, right? And we have a really unique model. I think one of the challenges that folks like that are going to struggle with lack of diversity find is because they're funneling themselves too much into one specific category, right? It's, I want to be in Los Angeles and I want to work with men between 25 and 34, or that's who my best customer is, or something like that, right? Well, it's very hard to expand not only your horizons, but expand your product lines, expand your opportunity for growth, right? Because you're just sticking to one category so meticulously. It's really important to be able to have that shift and open your products up to vast new demographics, right, is the word there. So that can be anything from, having moms of young boys be the ones that you're advertising a video game console to, right? Frankly, I never purchased a video game console, but I had loads of them. So that sort of mentality shift is a huge piece of it. And it's almost a silly example because that goes to so many different categories, so many industries, so many products that you're used to, right? It could be anything from, a laptop to a water bottle, right? Things that are just laying around your desk that were originally targeted for, like the Yeti bottle, right? Was originally made for folks going on 4 and 5 day treks. Well, I haven't been on a 4 and 5 day hike in a really long time, but I love that my water is cold all the time, right? So those are the types of mentalities that you just wouldn't have the opportunity to learn if you didn't expose yourself or your brand to new diverse audiences. And so I think that's super important. It's really important to allow folks to be attracted to you. And that's a major shift that's going to happen right now in the market as well, is we're doing too much of pushing people into one bucket, right? And instead we should be opening the top of the bucket and say, hey, come on in, right? Because that's how you get your best customers. That's how you attract new audiences. And frankly, that's how you learn that people like cold water, right?
People like cold water.
Yeah.
Good to know. Great. Well, Josh, we do a little segment before we head out each episode talking about innovations and trends anticipating that will shape the world of influencer marketing in the landscape. So do you have any predictions, any inklings that you think, are coming down the line?
Yeah, I do. I think technology is fascinating, right? I am obsessed with technology. And it's been a hyper growth period since, call it the 80s, but the year 2000, right? Certainly with the .com bubble. Since then, even in the last year, right, with the rise of artificial intelligence, things are changing fast and you can feel it, right? For me, I would go a little bit out on a limb. I think AI is fantastic, but in the world of authentic marketing and advertising, for me, it's going to be something that we're going to call virtual reality, right? So virtual reality is not a totally foreign concept. It's, the VR goggles that you've got, right? And that you see ads for and commercials for. That's going to take place and that's going to be adopted by social media platforms. So when you watch a video on Instagram, you're going to be able to not only just pause the video, clicking it, but you're going to be able to click on a bag that you might see for one split second, and it'll bring you directly to the marketplace where you can purchase that bag. These are types of things that you're going to see in stadiums, in really experiential type situations, and it's going to find its way to your pocket, your phone, your computer, whatever you want to call it, in a short order form. It's, in my opinion, the future of online marketplaces. So yeah, I think that's going to be a really fun transition, a really fun new adoption period, but it's going to be something that is super powerful. And I hope that ApexDrop is, continues to be as forward thinking as we have been, just as that comes to rise, because it's a whole new shopping experience for you. So it'll be really fun to see.
Yeah, I think your prediction's spot on, for better or for worse. Personally, for my wallet, that is a slight concern. I think you are spot on with that prediction. I think that's fantastic. Well, Josh, as we start to wrap up this episode, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, whether it be about ApexDrop, about the world of influencer marketing, your experience in general, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Man, I think you did such a great job covering sort of the whole scope of what influencer marketing does and the impact that it can make, not only on brands and people, but certainly on like the consumer as well, right? That's where I want to go with it. I think the only thing that I would add, plug, whatever you want to call it, is if you're a creator, you should check out the ApexDrop app. I personally have seen it make a difference in people in my life, in their side hustle, their career, what have you. Just being able to connect yourself with awesome brands that you maybe have never heard of, but also develop yourself, grow your following, and make sure that you are an asset to brands as we continue to shift into the macro and nano influencer space. It's more important than ever to not only increase your own portfolio, but just get the exposure that you deserve. So check out ApexDrop on your app store, and we'll see you soon.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for another great episode of Drop Talks. I appreciate you being on.